All right, welcome to the Pat Life Podcast. As always, I am Patrick, and today I have with me my brother, Mr. Matt Daly. What's going on, dude?
Not much, man. Thanks for having me. Look forward to doing this. I was wondering when you were going to ask me. I had to get on here at some point, so
Of course. Well, I
but I
asked you a
appreciate it.
month
I'm
ago.
here. Looking
I asked you
forward
a
to it.
month ago, so I didn't say. I felt like I was getting ghosted. I'm like, family, right? It's like, yeah, I haven't heard from him. Yeah. No, man, but it's no, I am. I'm excited to have you on. It's a pleasure. For those who don't know, obviously, majority of you, my brother, just like my friend as well who came on, Frank Martinez, went through a huge transformation in regards to physical fitness, health, and wellness. And I want to hear and share these stories. Not only, but one of the big reasons is because in my field, my profession, inspiration comes from others who have gone through the journey, the ups and downs, the trials and tribulations. So I want to share those stories so people know that this is happening all over, and your health and wellness is in your hands if you're willing to take that ownership. So that all being said, man, do you want to just kind of start kind of your journey of just like where even before the actual changing, kind of what got you to where you were and where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because it's you have these moments. I feel like we've talked about this before. There's always that moment where something clicks for you. Like you go through this whole point. I went through 25 years of life just doing things a certain way and acting a certain way and just okay with a certain way, and then something happens, right? There's something that clicks for you. So obviously when my son was born, that was a big part of that. And I just remember growing up to playing outside with dad and things like that, and I wanted to be able to do those things because man, just the idea of just not being able to walk and stay active with my kid was always like, I don't know. But there was one moment I was at work. I was working at Trezero's at the time, and this was kind of like that moment for me because you go through all these processes and you don't realize, like, your family, your friends, everybody's supportive and everybody loves you for you. And I think that's the big thing is like at the end of this, the people around you love you for you. So you just kind of get into this world of like, oh yeah, like I guess what I'm trying to say is I didn't realize that I wanted to make a change. I was
Right.
at Trezero's and one of my good buddies, Jack, worked there with me. And I was talking to a bunch of the employees and I was like, yeah, I stand to maybe lose a couple pounds or something. But and he heard me say this, and I'll never forget this. This registers so hard. I remember the laugh, and he's still a good friend of mine, but he laughed at me. And like he literally stopped and laughed. And maybe that's not the best thing, but we all have these triggers. And I kind of like looked at him and I turned around and I said, like, well, no, like it's not that bad. And he's like, no, dude, like seriously, like you're a mess in so many words. And that was kind of like that's what it was. And we all react different to different things, but I'm somebody who kind of needs that. And I've always needed that. And that was really when I decided that plus, my son being born were like the two big things that was like, okay, I got to make a change. I need to make a change. I need to do something. Um, I didn't really have any goals because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. Um, I started looking on the internet, things like that, which is a great place because there is a lot of information. But at the same time, it's a bad place because there's a lot of information,
Right.
right? It's trying to decipher which information is, useful, which is going to benefit, things like that. So um, the first thing I ever saw was I stopped drinking calories. That was like the first thing that I ever did. And that's kind of where I started. I think the heaviest I ever was the biggest number I ever saw on the scale was 312 was the
Mm.
biggest number I ever saw. Um, I could have been heavier than that. I have no idea. I could have been bigger than I have no idea. But that was the biggest number I saw. And not having any goals was in the beginning was kind of a good thing for me. And I know that sounds bad, but it was because I didn't really have any bars, right? Like I was just like, you know what? I just want to get in better shape. So I started with that. I said, you know what? I'm not going to drink my calories. I used to drink Red Bulls and Monsters and Gatorades and soda and all that stuff every day. And after like a month, I had lost like 20 pounds. I didn't change anything. I didn't exercise. I didn't change the way I ate. Like you know, 3 a.m. Taco Bell runs after a long night of Gears of War was just a thing. And I never changed any of those things. I just stopped drinking calories and I was able to lose 20 pounds. from there, I was like, you know what? Like, imagine if I put forward just a little bit more effort. Like, if I was a little bit more conscious of what I ate, if I was a little bit more, cardio based in the gym, whatever the case was, like, what could I do? And it kind of just snowballed from there. So those were like the big things that really at least got me going in that sense.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, obviously I was there for most of the journey. I mean, or at least present in regards to understanding your beginning, middle, end, and all that. But what was interesting is I remember you obviously talking about, when, Owen was born and everything. But, I do remember that story with Jack. And what it dawned on me is, you said, is a lot of people are different, but majority of clients that I've actually been with, myself included, when mostly men, at the, just being honest, it's getting that kind of that tough love of just someone just calling you out. And it's not, and in your heart, it's not from, it's not there to disrupt, who you are. It's a kind of attack. It's kind of an address to the ego, right? That, or the illusion of ego, where it's like, Jack's laughing, he doesn't hate you, clearly you guys are friends. But it's that ego that's like, your ego can't allow you to see what's really there. Like, you, Matt, like, you're a mess, like, you know what I mean? And it's not to be rude, but it's really like, when you kind of with yourself think, oh, wow, maybe I am. My buddy Frank that I spoke to, he was the same thing. He was like, I needed to make a change. I got to a point where I couldn't ignore what was happening or what I was experiencing every day. And but what is so fun to see is you were expressing, is just how it doesn't take a lot just to start. And actually having too many goals too early is the worst thing that you could possibly do, because now you're in this mindset of, okay, I have to try to get here, I have to do this, rather than just being like, hey, let me just go on this journey. Where do I start? All right, let me just not drink my calories. There's no, you're not holding yourself to any crazy obligation. So is there anything in regards to, when you were going through that process, where you were really starting to hit obstacles, where you're like, wow, this part of that transformation, this is really testing me? Or anything?
Well, yeah, no, like, to piggyback off one thing you said too, like, so you said this, you do this for a living, and you saw me going through the path and doing all this stuff. And it's like the people around you, like I said, sometimes you need that. Cause like, even you say, hey man, like, maybe get out there and do a run or something. But like, again, there's not that push because your family and friends, like, it's one of those things. But yeah, obstacles were after that first 20, first 30, when I did it, it was like, you become addicted to it because you've seen the results now, and that's what you want. However, some of the obstacles are, what happens when it isn't going as fast as before?
Right.
What happens when it's not a lot of that water and all that initial, loss that you get when you make a change to your body? I think that was the hardest part, was those plateaus and how to fight through those plateaus and knowing how to get through those plateaus. I had a plateau, at 260, at 250. It's like, how do I fight through those things? And that's where, doing your research, using your resources, putting in the time and effort. That's when I started getting into macronutrients and learning about those, because I was like, hey, maybe this is something that can assist. I look back at it now, a lot of the stuff I was looking up was, it was just happened to be bodybuilders. And that was the thing that I was really drawn to going through the process. So I'm not saying maybe it was the best stuff for me at the time, but I learned a lot about food, about calories, about, macronutrients, micronutrients because of that. And it really did help propel me through a lot of those plateaus. So I say biggest obstacles really in any weight loss journey, or any specifically weight loss, is those plateaus, because it's like, it stinks when you've made so much progress and then all of a sudden you're stuck somewhere, and again, you're still learning. So it's like, where do I go? What can I do? And that's just where, honestly, like I said, knowing your resources and finding those, that maybe that writer or that blogger or, that YouTuber that you really respect and appreciate their information comes into play, because there's a lot of content out there. You just have to know where to get it from.
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing that you're addressing is ownership, right? Is owning that you don't have an answer, or owning that maybe you don't know where to go from this point, but allowing yourself to say, all right, I don't know, but I'm going to go find it. I'm going to go search. And, I think that's a hard part for a lot of people. In my field, I've been fortunate to have worked with so many great people, clients, and, a lot of clients that I maybe could have given, definitely could have given more. But it was a learning experience even on my end. But one of the things that I noticed from my side of this is, there are times where people will pay for a service and you want to give the best service, but there's a disconnect of understanding of like, I can't physically change you. You still have to do the change. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to do everything to be part of that motivation, doing the research as well, trying to gain more knowledge so I can do, getting more certification so I can give more, hopefully to help you and facilitate your journey. But I can't change you. And that's one of the things that, I don't know if you notice this with people around you now, but that's, I think, one of the deceptions that a lot of people have. And even though they'll say, "Oh, I know," but it's like, well, I'm paying for a service, change me. Not everyone's like that. People understand, but at the same time, there is sometimes with a lot of people of like, well, if I'm paying for something, the ownership is on them. And it's like, well, we're working together here, right? But in your situation, or like I said, my other friend Frank's situation, yeah, you might have friends and to help you along the way, but there's not that exchange of money to feel like, oh, okay, now the onus is on them as well. It's like at the end of the day, it really is you. It is your journey, your research, right? And that's with you also having a family, having your job. Like, you were going, this means so much to me that I'm gonna try to find moments to dedicate to my well-being,
It
and no one else
was,
is gonna do that for me.
and that's, kind of an interesting piece, because it was like, I work a busy schedule, this, I'm always working. So it was, for me, I would work all day, and then I would go to the gym at night, and sometimes that was a hard piece too, is like, you just work 12, my shifts aren't normal 8-hour shifts. I work 12, 13, 14 hours. And then I had to find that extra gear to go and do my training at the gym and get in there and do my 20, 30 minutes of cardio and then do my weights and then go home, sleep, rinse and repeat. And it doesn't sound, great, but at that, with my schedule and how it was, those are the sacrifices I had to make. I had to find and wiggle that time in for me. And I grew to love it. Now, even in everyday life, like every day that I go to the gym, that hour 15 minutes is mine. And it's just become part of my routine, things like that. But to your point, like, people will ask all the time, when you've gone through a journey and you've done it, like, people know you've done it. And you and I have talked about this in the past, where it's like, you do this and this is your thing, and you're literally one of the smartest guys I know when it comes to this stuff. But if you and I are standing at a family party,
Yep.
people come up and ask me, and it's only because they know I've done it, and they're like, how'd you do it? Things like that. And it is a weird, it's a weird burden. It's one that I enjoy, though, because it's like, I like helping people too. And but to your point, it's like, I can give you the knowledge, I can give you the information, I can give you what worked for me.
Right.
But and that's free. I'll do that for free. I have this conversation about that so much in a given day, and it's a lot of information. But I can't push somebody to want to do it. And like I said, I think it goes back to, we all have that reason, we all have that moment, and it's like, what's that moment for you? Maybe you haven't hit it yet, maybe it hasn't happened yet, and that's okay. But eventually you will have that defining moment where you're like, you know what, this is the time, now I want to do it. And I promise you, when that moment hits, you will
Oh, yeah.
know, and you will want to do it.
Dude, yeah, you're 100% right. And I will preach the same thing, is that I can have all this knowledge and all of these people that I've learned from that are the best of the best. But at the end of the day, if the everyday person sees someone who's actually gone through the journey, that's what they're going to want to see. And there are trainers who get a lot of work because they've gone through that physical transformation, and people are just so drawn to that. And that's the thing that's so beautiful about this whole thing is, yes, we could sit here and, if someone comes in and goes, hey, I'm having these shoulder pains, or I'm having this, where I can really use my skills in my toolbox to go, all right, let's really dive into this. Let's look at what we have in front of us here. But in regards to like nutrition, maybe just workouts, people are going to go to you 100% of the time. And I'm with you. They might be like, hey, my shoulder, I have pain. Can you help me? Where with you, they're like, how do I see this transformation? And that is one of the things that I had a conversation the other day about, is that, and, chime in whenever you feel, is that people, when we go on journeys, especially fitness, let's just stay there for a sec. When you start to go down the path what ends up happening is people go, oh, I don't want to go into the darkness of that. Let's just call it the darkness, because it's too much to deal with. Because right, you're dealing with your own body shame. You're dealing with hidden emotions or suppressed emotions. You're dealing with eating habits that are caused by psychological things that have been around for lifetimes. The case is, so you go through all these things to get to that dark place, and a lot of people go, oh, people just don't want to go to that place. They don't want to have to deal with it. They don't want to have to address their problems. This is things I've heard. And what I realized is that's not necessarily the case, because a lot of people will talk about their problems. A lot of people will, you know, maybe say stuff, in like a joking way about something they're not happy about themselves, right? So people will talk about these things. But what I started understanding is when you start to stress people out in a way of trying to get them to reach potential, that's where people drop off. Is because, in my opinion, a lot of people don't want to actually step into the potential of self because they're afraid of how much they can actually achieve. And I know seems silly or maybe even counterintuitive, but it's like, if I'm telling you, Matt, you have the ability to do so much more and be great at what you're doing and see all this change. A lot of people go, I don't know if I can handle that type of that that success or that feeling of, wow, I've changed. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's just something that I've really thought about for a long time. And how I can say it in the most simple way is when I put people under stress. And I had this conversation the other day. When I put people in like, say, a lunge, I say hold it. And they'll hold it. Where do you feel it? Okay, I feel it in my glute, all these things. And they start to shake. Their body starts to like stress out, and they don't know what to do. And I say, just try to breathe, calm down. They'll jump out of the move. What happened? Oh, I know I could have done more. Okay, well, why'd you stop? I got stressed. I freaked out, or like, oh, it just was getting hard. Okay, if you know you can do more, let's go for more. So then it's like, ultimately what ends up happening is that people will do more. They'll do more repetitions. They'll hold it longer. They'll do things that they didn't think they could do, but deep down they knew they could. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the potential, like that true self was like, we can do this. But that ego, or the shadow of ego, is getting in the way of that. If that makes sense. I know I kind of want to rant there, but it's just one of those things when people really allow themselves to tap into that potential, that's when people really start to see the change. But
There
that's
also
the thing for people.
there's also this fear of failure. And again, like going through it too, I know I had that. I was always scared of like, what if I did it? I can't do it. I mean, how many times have I started a diet, stopped a diet? Like there is this internal fear of failure. And again, at the end of the day, you go on a diet. What happens if you do fail? Let's say you do fail. And again, I failed so many times before I was able to figure out what worked for me. It's like, that's okay. It's okay. It's okay to have those moments where you're like, you know what? And that's why I said I keep referencing this, because I feel how important it actually is in having that moment, and having that something changes in you. It's weird. It's like our bodies, we have chemicals, right? Like there's this weird chemical reaction that feels to happen where it's like, yes, like that's what it is. But yeah, to your point, first time you go on a Stairmaster, the first time you start doing, lunges, or the first time you lift a weight, like all of it, it's like, you know, it's almost intimidating maybe, or I don't know what it is. It's like it's this weird dynamic with mind and body where it's like you can't. I don't know.
Okay, well, let me actually, because I think I've thought about this again as I've been doing this for 10 years. I've really thought this through. Is we live in a world that is very material driven, right? Everything being a very materialistic lifestyle is also, having a life of ease, all these commodities and everything where you can be like conveniently getting what you need. Oh, yeah, I need something from Amazon. All right, it's gonna be here in 2 days, or it's gonna be your next day delivery. Hey, I need something. I'm gonna go to the grocery store. I'm gonna go get it. What happens when you start to deal with physical transformation? You're not getting that tomorrow. And that innately, I think, is what fears people, is the fear in people, in the sense of, I'm afraid that not necessarily failing, because as you just said, failing is learning. That what you did is you just learned. You learned something. There was a test, and then there was a lesson learned from that test, right? I'm gonna test myself rather than going, hey, let me, learn this class, take this lesson, and then take a test. You're taking the test before you learn anything. you jumped into it. And that's the thing is that people don't want to do that. They want the lesson and then they just get what they want. Like, oh, okay, I know that if I, you know, work with the trainer, or if I do this workout program that this celebrity did, I'm gonna get this body. Well, that doesn't happen. It doesn't always just happen that way. As you said, it's that shift in self. And a lot of that really, if you understand, it really ends up becoming the present moment. Is you allow yourself to not be just in your head of the thoughts of all the stuff that can be, well, how long is this going to take me? Is it going to be a year from now? What if I get hurt? What if I don't have time? What if I don't get my, all of those things. But what you did in that moment is you, going back to Jack specifically, he said something registered in the brain. You're like, it's not that bad. No, it is. You allowed yourself to be in that moment of what does that feel like? What is happening now? Not just in my mind, but my body, and then obviously like spirit, your breath.
It's
And it's that moment, and you just hold it and you go, huh. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and again too, it's I don't know. The biggest thing is that it's uncomfortable. It's not normal. Your body, like when you really think about what we're doing, our bodies really aren't meant to. They are, but they aren't. Like for instance, when you lift a weight, like you're literally breaking the muscle down. Like that's what you're doing, right? Like that's the point of it, correct? Like that's what you're doing when you lift a weight. So you're having to do something that is uncomfortable.
Right.
When you get to, rep 7, rep 8, rep 9, rep 10, and it hurts and it doesn't feel good. And it's getting to that point where you like, I have to push through this. I have to fight through this. It's weird. Like when you get to that point and when you can really touch that part of your brain where you can really fight through those things, look at all the amazing things that people do in the world, like the David Blaine stuff and all this crazy things that you see that are accomplished, these stunts and these physical acts, like the world's strongest men guys. Like people shouldn't be able to lift
Right.
these 700-pound balls like off the ground, right? Or deadlift 1,200 pounds. But like there is certain there's something to be said when you're able to touch that part of your brain and be able to fight through that and tell your body like, no, we're going to do this. We're going to get through this. It's fascinating. And that kind of touches on what you said earlier is like knowing you can do it, knowing you can push through it. But how am I going to convince myself or get myself to that point?
Right.
Once you break through that and once you get to that, there's nothing you can't do.
I,
There really is nothing you can't do, but you have to find that. And that's the hardest part. And I think that as people, that's what we struggle with. And I'm not even talking about weight loss or any of that at that point. I'm just talking about in general is when you can get through that barrier and you can get through that, that's when you can really start living your best life because nothing's going to hold you back at that point. Nothing.
yeah. Well,
That's
dude, yeah. But no, what's so fascinating what you were saying in regards to the different people who have done the most amazing things in the world, what it does to the everyday person is what? That's possible. That's physically possible, or whatever they're doing. That someone can actually now do that. And then there's those set of people who immediately go, well, why can't I? When I learned to play guitar when I was younger, I was like, I'm gonna learn guitar. How come that everyone that I watch on YouTube or concerts that I've gone to and I see them doing stuff, I go, how come they can do that and I can't? And I realized then, hey, I could. It's the same neck of a guitar, just maybe different brand, maybe a little thinner, maybe a little thicker, different strings. But at the end of the day, it's a fret, it's the 12 frets, the 6 strings. I just need to take the time. I need to, you know, invest in that journey, and the same thing with yours. It's like, well, why can other people, go to the gym and run for 30 minutes and why can't I right now? Well, it's not that I can. I just right now that's not maybe where I'm at. It's not that it's not possible. And as you said, it is simple when you really think about it, but then you start to look and see that all these possibilities are just constantly at your doorstep. It's just a matter of not whether you're willing to, take the package and bring it in and that's how I start to try to look at everything. And I know that you do, but to kind of veer in more towards you, how has that transformation or your transformation affected now how you live your life? I know you say you make going to the gym part of your routine, but like your overall well-being, all of it.
it's a confidence thing too. And for a long time, I struggled with that. not being confident in oneself, but it correlates over into life and family and work. I'm having a good run at work right now too. And I mean, you can make the correlations. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but there's a certain confidence in the job that I have. And I think it's just, it all correlates. And I think that's the big takeaway, because when you conquer something like that, or anything for that matter, but in my case, setting out to do something and losing 120 pounds or whatever the case is, for me, it's like, man, there's nothing that I can't do. So again, I guess it builds on that confidence, and it really makes you think like, geez, maybe there's really nothing that I can't do. And it just gives you that extra motivation every day. But you don't view it that way. You're not viewing it as like, oh, hey, this is like, you're just kind of living. It's like, it's weird, because I can tell you this right now. I'm almost so far removed from my journey. It's been so many years now that like I don't really think about it anymore. Like when I live my life this way, and it's like it was a big part of my life. It was a 2.5 years of my life, and my weight loss journey was not like others. And I think that's something to be said too. It wasn't this 6 month lose 120 pounds, here we go. It was nothing like that. It was a 2.5 year transformation. It was slow, it was methodical. That I told you, I didn't have certain goals and things like that. So again, even with that said, it's like, I don't it's weird, I almost don't think about it now, because I'm so used to living in the moment and living how I do now, that it's a big part of my life. But because of that, I think it's made me a stronger person. And that's why maybe I don't think about that as much anymore, is because I have so much other stuff going on. But I have that to thank for it, because I don't think I'd be in the position I was, or I am, if I hadn't made those life changes. I just don't think I would have been able
Yeah,
physically to do it. So I owe everything that I'm at for that decision that I made, when I decided to make it in my 20s.
dude. Well, just to kind of let people who don't know, I mean, your journey as well, and just your job, right? It's as you said, there might be a correlation, there might not, but I'd venture to say that there is. You went from working at a big restaurant that you're currently at. You started as a busboy. When mom was working there, got you a job, and now you're working your way up to potentially like a regional type position, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Just, and again, overseeing multiple units and things like that. But it just kind of, I guess it's weird to piggyback on what you said before. It's like, we don't realize the things we can do. Like
Hmm.
we don't realize in our minds and in our bodies and our thoughts, like the things that if we put our mind to something, we can do it. Whether
Yeah.
it's weight loss, whether it's work, whether it's anything for that matter. I didn't even think about it like that until you had just made that reference. But yeah, it's a fair point. It's like, to start where you are and then work your way up and do that, it all correlates. It all works into that same realm. And it's like, it just goes to show you, like, when you put your mind to something, although it may be uncomfortable, although it may not be, safe, you can do amazing things as a human being. And it's anybody can do it. Anybody.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, right? With your job and obviously your weight loss journey, what is the constant here? What is the constant, let's just say, stress? It's time. Think about it, dude. When you started working there when you were what, 17,
Yeah.
16, and now what, 30, 40,
Two,
32,
two,
33?
relax, relax, relax,
Well,
relax.
yeah, I'm just trying to think of. I'm like, all right, yeah, my birthday. So yeah, but the thing is, so that right there, let's just what that 18 years. So you've been with the company for 18 years, right? Or no, 12
Yeah.
years.
Math is slipping us today, but
Yeah,
I think it's like 14 or 15 years, but
14,
yeah,
15.
for
But you get
a
my.
while.
So the
Yeah.
point I'm getting at though is you whether or not you knew what you wanted to do. I know there was times where you're like, I'm just kind of working here, but you stayed with it. You went, you worked hard, right? Those things weren't missing in your life. You worked very well. I know, just from you coming home and mom, and people spoke very highly of you. They loved, when you were waiting their tables at that time. So the point I'm getting at is you, even though you kind of lost it going off the bandwagon, you had those pieces there. It was just knowing how to use those pieces for this journey, right? And that was all it was. And that's a lot of the things though, and this is the hardest thing for people to really grasp with any journey, is it takes time. And this is the deception and illusion of our society of materialism, is it's going to take 6 months. Hey, 6 months. But when you read the actual fine print and look at how those things are written or talked, it says, you could lose up to 18 pounds or 20 pounds in 8 weeks. You know, lose up to, you know, 40 pounds in, 60 days. Lose up to 40 pounds literally means you can lose a pound or 40 pounds. You have the ability to lose up to 40, but that doesn't mean you will. So these are the things that we get so attached to because we want those quick fixes. We don't want to we have too many other things. We don't have time for this. I want this to be simple, to the point, kick my butt, in and out. All right, how do I look? You know what I mean? But the thing is, you don't realize the stress that causes people. You know what
Well,
I'm saying?
it's weird too, and resorting back to weight loss, and you're talking about stress, and that's another obstacle too. And the one thing I would tell, man, is the scale is important because you want to know where you're at. But I had more stress in my life stepping on that scale than I did in any other, because you learn a lot about weight fluctuation and what one meal can do. I used to weigh myself after every meal, and I'm sure anybody, and I'm sure there's people who will watch this will know exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
Our stepdad knows exactly what I'm talking about
Yep.
because he does the same thing. He does the same thing. But
Yeah.
the point is like you live and die by that thing, and it's tough. And I learned too as I went on a little bit longer, when my waist size started to go down. That was the first thing I noticed. I was wearing 44s, 42s, 40s, 38s, 36, 34. Now I wear 32, 34, and it's like those are the things you should be looking at.
Yeah.
T-shirt sizes going down, things like that. I mean, it's always, I mean, we all love getting new things, right? Like it was so crazy to me to not be in an extra large shirt or a double XL shirt anymore. Like I'm able to go, I'm like, oh yeah, this and that. And it's like,
Right.
those are the milestones, and those are the things that really helped kind of ease my mind. And that's when I stopped doing, I would have to hide the scale
Yeah.
because like I'd want to step on it so much. And I knew this is either going to be really awesome or it's going to be really, really terrible, and it could potentially ruin my whole day. So it was like, you know what I'm saying? And like, I
Yeah.
put so much work in. Why am I 4 pounds heavier? And just understanding how water affects the body and food affects the body. And it's like, no, you didn't actually gain 4 pounds. Like it's not how it works.
Right.
Like, but again, when you're learning and you're going through it, I'm sure tons of people who watch this are going to know exactly what I'm talking about. But those are the stresses, and those are the things that are really going to stop you, because when you are stressed, your body stresses, and when your body stresses, it's not working as optimally maybe as it could. And
Absolutely.
that's the thing you have to remember with that too. So don't step on that. Don't step on that thing all too often.
Well,
Don't.
that you nailed it on the head, right? It's the actual physical milestones in regards to the emotional, mental, well-being. Because as you said, I mean, I had people jump on a scale. We would have, when I worked at the club, we'd have scales that were able to do further in-body assessments where it was looking at water intake, your skeletal muscle mass, your fat content, your body fat percentage, all those things. So we could look at multiple things based off the scale, and what you would see just doing it time and time again is, yeah, okay, you might have lost weight, great, but we just lost 3 pounds of muscle because you've been stressed all week or the last couple of weeks. You haven't really been eating as much, or you haven't been drinking as much water. You haven't, you've been trying to go crazy hard at the gyms. Now you're feeling lower back pain. Yeah, you lost the weight, but we've lost so much muscle. So this was one of the things that I was also would start to really teach people was, they get on the scale and literally palms would be sweating on people, or people would be have like just like I can't look, like almost as if they're watching an execution, where I was like, just calm, like we need to calm down. What, and then just asking, why are you so stressed about this? And it's like, because I don't want to see disappointment. And it was just starting to dawn on me where it was like, as you said, this can ruin somebody's day or their week, right? And that's the thing as we said earlier, when you're working hard towards something and realizing that things take time, it starts to wear at people, and a lot of people don't know how to necessarily handle that, and it's not easy. That's the best part of this. It's just not easy that this stuff takes time. But what do? We go, well, I don't want to take too much time So let me keep going on the skill. Maybe if I jump on it, true story. If I take off my socks, maybe it will be a little lighter. Like I've had people come in and be like, if I take my socks off, and so I'd be in the thing, I'd be like, you can take them off, but it's not, I don't think it's gonna make that much of a difference. And it's understandable, right? As people want to be happy, they want to feel well, but it's like, as you said, is this really going to help you right now, or is this actually going to create the opposite effect? So now you're stressed. Now your body goes into extreme fight or flight. So there's nothing going to your digestive tract. So now even if you've eaten something, that stuff's sitting there. Your cortisol's through the roof. Like you can go into all the minute details of what it's really doing in that moment. And then you can tell someone, be like, hey, you haven't lost any weight, but you just gained 3 pounds of muscle. Your water intake, your water levels are fantastic for your age, sex, height, all those things. And that was the one thing that I was trying to teach people, as you said, is that yes, we're going to do assessments, but we can look at all these pieces. And that was trying to get people out of that hamster wheel of, oh my God, I didn't lose any weight. It's like, oh wow, I gained muscle. Oh wow, my body fat actually went down, but I actually gained 3 pounds this assessment.
Well, to your point, I think I had lost a bunch of weight, and I think the lowest I had gotten down into the, I was like 180 or, low 180s, but I had no muscle. I think you and I talked, and
Yeah.
I had sent you a picture, and I was like, I'm like, and you're like, dude, like, don't try and lose any more weight.
Yeah.
Try and put on muscle.
Right.
And that was the moment. And again, we talk about these moments. And that was the moment for me where I decided, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to do that. And that was the conversation that you and I had. And I said, okay, because I had always watched, bodybuilding training, and Arnold and guys like that, and then some of the new age guys. And I find it fascinating that people can do this stuff and get their bodies into this place. But again, it was that moment with you. And I said, okay, so I'm going to do that. And I went back, and I went from 180 and I went back up to 220. And again, I didn't necessarily, I don't, again, you start learning some things, but I didn't necessarily do the right things with that either. I wasn't probably eating the right way. I was getting my protein in. I was doing all the things I'm supposed to be doing. And, but I was very focused on trying to get big, which is weird because I had spent 2.5 years
Right.
trying to get small because I wanted to be small. And then I had spent the better part of a year and a half trying to get big. So it was like this weird divide of like, wait a minute, I just spent all this time doing this, and now I'm spending this time doing this. But it was the best thing I ever did, because when I did that, I fell in love with lifting weights, and I fell in love with training. And now I could never see a life not doing it. Now I will live my life around 200 pounds, 195, 200 pounds. I feel great. I'm happy. I like where I'm at. I don't think about it. I don't,
Right.
like I did for 4 years. I don't think like that anymore. I live. And that's kind of the nice thing about it. But it's this, like I said, it's this weird piece, but it was tough because when I was slowly gaining weight, I was like, oh man, this is, I start sweating. I get a little weird because I was like, man, I'm going the wrong way again. I'm
Yeah.
going I'm
Well,
going the wrong way again. But,
the trauma, dude.
again, it was like, because I always told myself I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to let myself get back to that. I won't do it. I'm too disciplined. I know too much. I know too much. I always tell myself that, like, I know too much to let that happen again.
Right.
But every day I saw that creep, and I'm like, oh man, we're heading the wrong way, Matt. But there was a certain moment where, recomposition happened, and I started to see the fruits of my labor, and I started to see what that looks like. And like now, that my 200 pounds maybe 2 years ago looks a lot different than my 200 pounds now. It's a very different look, and understanding, like everything, time, but
Yep.
recomposition is possible if you're doing it the right way. You're eating the right foods, you're training the right way. Sleep.
Right.
Sleep.
Rest.
I can't stress that enough. And people don't understand that part. When I talk about that, I'm like, if your muscle's here and this is your muscle, and you break your muscle down and you only allow your muscle to heal to here, you never grow. You're never going to get it bigger. It's never going to go up. You have to let it recover. And then you
Right.
break it down, and then you have to let it recover. That's the only way that you can do it. So, rest and letting myself, that was a hard thing for me, because I'm very addictive in the things that I do. I don't know the word that I'm looking for, but when I set my mind to something, it's like, I want to do it. I want to do it. I want to do it. And sometimes that's the hardest thing. You gotta check yourself and understand this. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. If it was easy, everybody would do it. If it was quick, everybody would do it. It's not. It's
Yeah.
not. So, you know,
Well, well, multiple things there, but one of the things that I always think about is how cliches are so on point. When you actually think about someone says something, it's like, oh, it's so cliche. When you really think about it, it's for a reason. Like you said, if it were that easy, everyone would do it. There's so much truth, in that, but sometimes people are just like, oh yeah, I know. But when you really sit with it and actually think about it, you go, this isn't an easy journey at all. And when you start to really understand and, well, I'd say understand those types of things, you've already tapped into this. You said that spark of, wow, okay, that's it. Now I'm ready. It's because you realize this is going to change me, literally change me. You are going to, like in any story, um, and also the zodiac, all these other things, is you're going to literally die to be resurrected into something new. Let me ask you this: are you the same person that you were when you started your journey?
no, I mean, no.
Right.
Yeah.
But what happened? You literally, as you said, you break down the muscle. You broke yourself down at the molecular level, the emotional level, the spiritual level, the mental level. Broke yourself down to a point where it's like, am I going to come out of this? Now, yes, you're very driven. A lot of us are very driven. But those moments of, as you see, even during rip, oh my gosh, this is a struggle. Am I going to make it? Am I going to make it? Am I going to fail or, in the mind, die? And this is the thing is then you come out, you succeed, you get through it. I did it. I survived. I put it in air quotes, right? But when you do it time and time again, you start to see literally you're basically slaying the dragon of what you once were that was in the depths of what was keeping you from your potential. You're constantly slaying that dragon time and time again to become, who you are, what you strive to be. And as you said, right, with the weight loss, and you started seeing it go back up, well, what happened? Oh, Matt, it's starting to creep up. It's starting to creep up. But when you use perspective here, right? When you first started your journey, you're like, oh, I can, yeah, I can lose a couple pounds. And it's like now you were like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. But when the veil was lifted and you realized, okay, I need this journey, you realize, whoa, this is not okay. So, as you said, that trauma of that veil being lifted of what you realize where you really were starting, right? Or a lot of people are starting. There's so much trauma to that because when people do lose the weight, now that addiction that was food for a lot of people or staying up late or all of these addictions that we carry, a lot of times that addiction gets carried on to something else. It becomes exercise. It becomes the scale. It becomes this addiction to not gaining weight again. So I will do whatever it takes to not, right? So in many ways, it's like this journey becomes an addiction just being passed to another, but where that real transformation, even more so, potential is being able to go, like you said, like now I just don't think about the scale. Now I don't think about these things. This is just my life. I've literally allowed myself to transform into the person, you see here on this conversation, and those addictions, I'm letting those go. Not saying that we don't have other things, but some of those big ones, right? Your food, you're staying up late, drinking sodas and Red Bulls and dipping. Those addictions, you're not saying that you don't have things, but there was the transfer of that. Hey, I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to set my mind to it. I'm going to keep doing it. It just got shifted to something else. And then you really stepped out of it and was like, I'm not going to worry about the scale. I know what I need to do. I have knowledge. And I'm going to use it, you know?
Yeah. And again, it took, and you said this earlier, time. This is
Right.
over. I mean, I was 25 when I decided to do this. So this is over 7 years. I mean, this isn't, and again, unfortunately, I had these ambitions. I'm like, in 3 months, I'm going to be jacked.
Right.
I'm going to be massive. And it doesn't work that way. And that's the thing is if you go into it with a realistic mindset, if you go into it with realistic expectations, and you go into it with the mindset of like, you know what? This is going to be a life change for me. I'm trying to change for the better. Then that's it. I remember one point you asked me, you're like, hey, Like, what supplementation are you taking? Because I think I had talked to you about it, and I was like, oh,
Mhm.
should I take this and this, that? And I was like, I'm taking, omega 3s, a multivitamin, and then protein where I need it. And you're like, that's great. It's fine. It's good. That's what you need. That's where, to me, that tells overall health. You're like, why are you taking omega 3? I'm like, oh, I heard it's good for joints. I heard it's good for your skin. I heard it's good for your hair. You're like, cool. You're like, multivitamin. Why are you taking them? I'm just like, I heard that it was good to take. You're like, well, you don't really need to take it if you don't want to, but if you want to, keep taking it. But you had said to me, you're like, these are good lifestyle changes. Like, that's what it is. And I guess in that moment too, I realized, like, I am changing lifestyle. Like, if you go into it with that mindset where you're like, I want to make that change for the better, that's why you don't think about it.
Right.
Like, the foods that I eat, the workouts that I do, the way I live I don't think about it, because I changed the way I live life. I know you brought up dipping. I did that for 10 years of my life. I did it
Right.
for 10 years of my life, and I stopped cold turkey. Like, I just decided when I was doing all this, I was like, you know what? Like, I don't need this.
Right.
I said, if I'm doing this, like, I might as well get this bad habit. And unfortunately, it's a habit that I probably shouldn't have been doing to begin with, but I didn't want to see my son see me doing that and be like, oh, what's that? And it's
Yeah.
like, you start to get this perspective, and you start to get these, and you change for the better, and you're able to make all these adjustments, and do, because I was kind of a disaster. And I know that sounds harsh, but I was like, I had lived so many 26, 25 years of my life. I had done one thing a certain way, and then all it took was a couple of years of changing the scope, changing the way you do things, changing the way and you can do it. Like, you can absolutely 100% do it. It takes time, it takes work, it takes energy, it takes a mindset. There's bumps, there's there's potholes in the road. It's not going to be clean the whole way through. If it was, again, everybody would do it. We'd all look the same. We'd all have the same, physiques, and we'd all be happy, and we'd all have it just doesn't always work that way. So you have to go with the bads, and the ups are great and the downs are too, and it's different for everybody. But if you go into that mindset, you say, I want to make this change. If you're making it as a lifestyle change, it makes everything else that much easier, because you're not dieting. We always hear the word diet. Oh, I'm dieting. It's like, diets are diets, but they never sustain. Tell me a person who's done a diet for the rest of their whole life. Well, it's not a diet at that point. It's your
Like,
life. Like, that's what you do. It's not a diet anymore. A diet is something you do for a couple months, whether you're trying to get ready for the beach or whatever like that. I get those things. But if you're constantly dieting, um, it's not going to work. It's not sustainable. Eating 1,000 calories a day, that's not sustainable. It's simply not. I did that. It doesn't work. I can promise you it doesn't work. You're miserable. You don't feel good.
right.
So again, it's just having that mindset, and going with that and doing that. And if you can accept that, like I said, it's going to make the whole process a lot easier, because then you don't have to think. You
Right.
don't have to think about what you eat. You don't have to think about what you do. You simply just live. And that's what makes it truly easy. It really does.
Dude, you nailed it on the head, man. And real quick with diet, you have time, right? You don't have to.
Oh, dude. Yeah, no, we're good.
So, as you said, right, it's no one does a diet for their whole life, because then it becomes as a habit, it's a lifestyle. But this is the thing, right? Of and then chime in when you feel. Um, when you hear the word diet, and this is what I've said to clients time and time again, what starts going through people's mind?
Well, I hear the word die. Like, that sounds terrible, but
Yeah, yeah.
think about how many times you've been on a diet and you've wanted to die, and like, that sounds terrible.
I've
But
never heard that one, actually, to be honest. That's
it's
a
literally it's literally the first three letters. But like, when you do a diet, and listen, I've done every diet under the sun, and it's like, when you do it, it's like, oh my God, like, I feel like I want to die. Maybe the first week's fine, like, you hate it. Second week's fine, you hate it. But that word, and again, terrible, but it sticks out to me, because every diet I've ever done, I felt that way. I'm like, this stinks. I've done 90-day cuts and all those different things, and I'm like, I'm sick of chicken, and I'm sick of broccoli, and I'm sick of, like, just eating the same. I was eating that same thing every day. So diets don't work. But here's the beautiful thing. It's not like it was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago. There are so many products now on the market. There's so many foods out there. Like, yes, the good natural clean foods, which I eat in my diet every single day.
Mhm.
but there's so many substitute products out there that are actually, if you look for the right ones and you can find the right ones that are free of, the extra chemicals and things like that, and they're good, clean products. There are so many companies out there putting out good tasting foods that you can use in your diet, to really help make uh, something where people are like, oh, that's boring. It's like, no, like these are just things that I eat now. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying? And there,
totally.
it's come a long way from where it was maybe 10 years ago. You just have to know where to look and know where to go. But there's a lot of good stuff out there, so you don't have to die,
Yeah.
while
Oh, right.
while eating. You can enjoy food. Now, I naturally, me, like, I like fruits, I like vegetables. There's nothing better than, like, a crisp apple, the sweetness that you
Yeah.
get from that. Like, I enjoy foods like that personally. But if you don't, I mean, there's stuff out there to appease the palate. There really is. So you don't have to die when you're eating.
But that's see, but this so yeah, there's so much I want to take there. But the first thing, going back to the word diet, one of the things that I have experienced with so many clients is the one word that comes to mind for me is restriction. Okay, if I'm on a diet, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't have this, I can't do it. So you start to hear all these restrictions. So what does that do psychologically? It
Yeah,
starts
it
stresses
messes
you
you
out,
up.
stresses you out, right? It starts to mess with your head. And then you start to think, okay, well, other people have done it. I watch YouTubers or I watch bodybuilders, they do it. Okay, I'm just not, I just don't have it in me. I'm just not meant for this. I don't have the ability to strive and reach these goals, right? So it's you fall off the wagon, oh, let me do another diet. So it's the same thing. It's this habitual cycle. Your habit becomes, let me just see if one of these things will change me. Let me pay for it. Let it change me. But that's the going back to what I said earlier. That product, that trainer, the thing that you put money for isn't going to be the thing that changes you. They're only facilitating. As you said with your diets, okay, yeah, it didn't work for me, but it did work for you when you understand what you learned from it. You took a test, you learned something from it. That's the thing that I'm always trying to get across is when we start to really look at taking the perception of everything that we do and how we perceive it of going, as you said, oh, maybe it is die. Maybe it is that feeling of dying. But really taking a step back and going, well, why do I feel like I'm dying? Oh, because I don't have the comforts that I had. I was able to step away for a week from what I was used to. Hey, I'll take that. It's a step in the right direction. Or you know what I mean? It's little things like that of really seeing those changes. As you said, it's like, hey, I learned what I don't want to do. Hey, sounds like a win to me. Unfortunately, people are spending tons of money over and over again to try these different things for a lot of people. But when you said it's just going back to simple things of realizing, all right, my habits aren't the best, but what do I like fruit? Do I like any vegetables? And then I've told this to people, what do you like? I like oranges. Just make something up. I like oranges. Okay. Go buy an orange and I want you to eat it slowly. Not to eat it slowly for the calories, but I want you to taste what that tastes like. I want you to really observe that taste. Really be with it. Enjoy being with every bite. Don't talk about it. Don't just be, be by yourself, but just be with that food. Why does it taste so good to you? What about it? Look at it. Actually look at the structure of it. And when you start to realize that vegetables, fruits, and things that come from nature, when you're eating it and it's not, completely modified and pesticides and herbicides, but when you actually start to observe it and be with it, you start going, wow, there's something beautiful about this. Wow, this dessert, this sweetness is packaged perfectly for me. Think about that for a second. Every strawberry, what I mean? It's perfectly designed, and when you taste it, it has that sweetness to it, or blueberries, whatever the case is. And when you can actually looking at it, for instance, like, oh, I gotta eat fruit, like instead of having these cupcakes, but you look at the magnificent of it, you go, wow, that's just beautiful, and it tastes delicious. It's sweet. It's got a nice little citrus to it. I can smell the citrus coming off as I peel, like whatever the case is. And this is just taking a step further, but you really start to have an appreciation for those things. You know what I
It
mean?
Well, to your point, to piggyback. So again, in talking diets, like, I had done chicken broccoli for like 6 months. That's all I ate. That's all I
Right.
ate every meal, chicken broccoli.
Crazy.
did it. And it was the most miserable I ever was. So after that 6 months was, and I say that because you know what, that's not sustainable. Like
Of
it's
course.
not. And
Yeah.
anybody who's watching this or anybody who's gone through these things, we know this. So yeah, in hindsight, there's 1% of the people in the world who can do that, but most of us can't. Like
Right.
most of us can't just eat like that every day.
Right.
It's just not possible.
Right. Right.
With that said, I'll never forget you brought up the orange, which is what triggered this for me. The first thing I ate when I came off that diet was it was a mandarin,
Hmm.
the little mandarin, or the wasn't the mandarin oranges, the little ones. And I remember peeling it, and I wasn't, by the way, wasn't trying to be in touch with the mandarin. I was like, I just really want to eat this. So
Yeah.
that was where my mind was at. But I remember eating it and like it hit me, and there was just this punch of sweetness because what happens is when we eat poor diets and we eat all these, chemicals and things in bags and stuff like that, and cupcakes and chips and things like that, it becomes just normal. Like you're just used to eating those things. So when you get a true flavor, it's just like it doesn't have that same spark on your body.
No.
But when you remove all of that stuff from your diet, and then you come back and you eat something like a strawberry or like an orange. I just remember eating this mandarin, and I was like, holy cow, like this is so sweet. And people always ask me, like, hey, Matt, and I always get, most of the questions I get are about how do you lose the weight and then what foods do you eat? So the one that like, hey, what do you eat for like a sweet tooth? I said, have you ever had a peach?
Yeah.
Have you ever had strawberries?
Yep.
I'm like, these are the things that I would recommend eating because they're so sweet. And I think strawberries, like calories per any fruit, is the lowest, calorie dense or calorie based fruit of all of them. I'm like, eat strawberries. Like I love strawberries. I love them. I'm not saying eating a whole carton, but like have a nice portion of strawberries, and there's a certain sweetness that you get from it. But it's weird because it took me having to do that and then coming back to it to regain, or not even regain, but to develop that appreciation for something like that.
Right.
Because the foods that we eat every day, whether it be cookies, chips, all those things, it kind of like takes away
Does.
from those things. And then, when again, eat a boring diet and then come back and then eat something like that,
Right.
it kind of reinvigorates your whole body and goes, what was that? Like, what did I just eat? Like, what was that?
Dude, well, you're nailing it on the head. And even with the boring diet, why I've been also, I don't know if your mom said it or whatever, but I've been really looking into farming and learning how to do agriculture and really trying to understand that world more, especially even with my training, because that's just been a whole nother thing for me. And that's just been, as I said, just blowing my mind and really trying to further understand what I do, and also just health and wellness that much more. But when you look at, talking about chicken and broccoli, when you look at farmers and people that I follow or I'll talk to, I have farmers that have come on the show, I have them coming on again, is when you see them and hear them, how they tend their chickens, they tend their cattle, they tend all these things. When they're ready to take it for kill, it's becomes a situation where there's such an appreciation for what that animal, that they know, I know exactly what your name is or your tag, when you were born, how you were treated, because we did it. We know what land you were grazing on. We know what your diet was. We know the health that you were in the entire lifespan. And it's in that moment where it's like, okay, now you're going to to be killed or to your finish. It's there's such an appreciation. So when people are like, tasting the fruits of your labor, it's not just about being like, oh, I'm a consumer. Let me consume, consume, consume. There's, as you said, you're going back to, you never lost it, but you're really going back to that innate connection with nature, right? Of like, wow, this mandarin is so good because it comes from nature. We are a part of this system. We're no different. We aren't separated, but we, a lot of times as consumers, go, gimme, gimme, gimme. Let me just eat. Let me eat. And this is something that I've learned, even how I've just coped with stress and coped with my traumas is you eat your problems. So what happens is you're eating, but you're not eating. You're not eating for the taste. You're not eating for the appreciation. You're not eating for, as you said, the nutrients, the vitamins that are living in there. You're just kind of eating it because you don't want to have to deal with whatever's on your mind, or you're binging a show, so now you're just sitting in front of TV eating. And that's the thing so with me talking to farmers, like we try to get eggs from local farmers. Friends have chickens in their backyard that we're trying to get eggs from and stuff. So now when I eat these eggs, like looking at them as I crack them open, like looking at the yolk, looking at all these different pieces, and just really being like, all right, I know that it came from one of those 7 chickens that I was holding. And I appreciate that, and I know I'm taking it to another point, but that is the thing of when you can appreciate yourself, appreciate food, appreciate everything in your life, you start to realize that this journey, as you said, you start to learn how to take control, and you start to have, as I said, gratitude, appreciation for it, rather than being like, this is a diet, this is a chore. I gotta, I have to do this. If I want to be
Well,
healthy, I have to do this. So,
well, here's the thing too, is like when you take somebody who maybe doesn't have the greatest diet too. So what happens is like, let's say you're eating this diet where, I mean, maybe in peak, I was eating this diet that was 5,000 calories every day, like not even knowing between drinking and eating and doing all these things, right?
right,
And there's this weird dynamic because people always ask me, like, how did you only eat chicken and broccoli? Well, here's the thing is that you ever eat Chinese food and you eat it and you're stuffed, and then like an hour later, you're starving again. And you have to ask yourself, why am I hungry? Well, when your body's asking, or when your body's telling your mind or your brain's telling your stomach that you're hungry, it's because you're lacking nutrients. And
right,
like that's a big takeaway. It is like if you're eating a diet that lacks nutrients, you ever see like the My 600-Pound Life and those shows, and they're like, how are you always hungry? Well, the reason is when you eat a lot of that processed food that lacks these nutrients, your body just keeps telling you like, hey, we really need this stuff
right,
and we want it. And so what it does is it tells you you're hungry. But if
right,
you have a poor diet that you're not eating and getting these things, you just continue to fill. And then once that food gets out, it's like, hey, we're hungry again. And we still don't have any more than we did the time before.
yep,
If you fill your diet with the nutrients and you're eating these foods that have those good
right,
micronutrients, I'm not even talking macronutrients, I'm talking micronutrients, the vitamins and things like that, it goes a long way. That's how I was able to eat that diet. I was never hungry. I was never starving. It wasn't fun, but I was never craving more and more food because I was getting all the nutrients that I needed.
yeah, oh yeah,
So it's something to be said on it too. And I will say this, get through that first week and all of a sudden I wasn't thinking about it. I knew that the food I was eating wasn't tasting the greatest. And like, I'm like, oh, this is really like bland and all this stuff. And yeah, salt, pepper, like the whole bit. But take it a step further in your everyday diet. If you can get that good balance of micronutrients, you're going to find yourself not really wanting to binge foods as much because you're getting the things that you need through food. And I think that's a big thing that kind of, I don't hear it get talked about enough. And I'm actually shocked that it doesn't, because I think it's a fair point to be made, is if you're getting it. And that's why good foods like, farm foods like eggs and vegetables and things like that, agriculture based foods, like when you're getting it off the land and things like that, they
mhm,
check all those boxes. Remember, that's stuff that's meant to be eaten. That is meant for human consumption. And that's why it has those benefits on our bodies. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I don't eat pizza and I don't eat McDonald's and I don't eat those things. Of course I do. I'm human like everybody else, but your everyday diet, if you're hitting a lot of those pins, or your everyday foods that you eat, you're
right.
not going to find yourself really striving for some of those things because you're getting everything that you need.
Dude, you hit up a really good point about just being overweight, obese, and basically starving to death. Because that is a thing. Is that you get people who are, you said 600 pounds, and all of a sudden they're, they realize they're literally starving to death because they're not getting the nutrients. Right? It's not that they're not getting calories in them. It's not that they're not getting substance in their body. But as you said, when the body's lacking nutrients, it's literally that is starving to death. Um, you know, there's a whole piece of that with the agriculture that we're currently experiencing in some capacity, but that's for another day. But what is interesting is that when people who are looking to see their self on that journey, a lot of times they're losing sight of the fact that it's not just about eating well, but it's also understanding like where does your food come from? Like, do you know? Like, yeah, you might get at a grocery store, but as you said, is it conventional? Is it getting pesticides, herbicides, a lot of these things that are, as you said, chemicals that you're putting in your body that are going to affect you? Because you might start the journey of eating healthy, but at the end of the day, it is important to start having awareness of, okay, well, where does my food come from? Because if you don't
It,
have any, if you even, I mean, just having any understanding, like, oh, it comes from California, California. It's like, okay, well, do you know where? And I'm not saying that every little thing that you buy you have to, but it's just something to start paying attention to, because as I said, it's like, if you're buying a pair of shoes, or like you got your jerseys, like if you're getting an authentic jersey, like you're gonna want to know where it's coming from. Clearly, like, all right, well, I want a jersey, I want it to be authentic. Well, this website doesn't look legit, but they're saying it's authentic. All right, I'm gonna buy it. You know what I mean? Like that, we with our material world, we don't do that, or we do this all the time, where we'll really do our due diligence of being like, well, I want to go see a movie. All right, well, let me look at all the movies that are out there. Let me read the ratings. Oh, let me actually like look who's in it. What's the plot? Have they done a movie like this before? Oh, I don't really like this. What genre? Like you start to go into like really looking into it, where a lot of people be like, you go to the grocery store and be like, oh, look, 100 calories. This must be good. Boop. You know what I mean? But no, we don't really even take the time to start asking questions, because we blindly are going in and want to just trust that we're going to get the best product, even though it's sometimes really cheap. What a coincidence.
And that's the hard thing too, is you realize this going through it is like it's a lot cheaper to go to McDonald's and eat off the dollar menu than it is to go and buy food from the store. Like, and it sounds crazy, and convenience is a big thing nowadays. Most households have multiple people working and things like that. It's different now. Like it is. So convenience is such a big thing. And,
Right.
but again, it's trying to, make the right choices and things like that. But again, to my original point, there's lots of stuff out there. There is, if you put in the time, the energy. And it's weird because we've had this conversation for an hour and a half, or however long it's been. But I want people, when they look at this, to take away, and you're talking diet and talking food and talking all these things, like, listen, it's a lot of information. I know it's a lot of information. And what happens is, because I felt this myself, it can be intimidating,
Mm,
because you're sitting there and it's you and I are talking, and this is things that obviously we've talked about in the past, and there's a lot of knowledge here, but it's intimidating for someone who's never done it. It's like, you know what? There is way too much going on there. Like, I'm not even going to get into that world, things like that. But again, the biggest thing I can say is, and even for you, like, there was a point where I didn't know anything about this stuff. I knew nothing. And guess what? There was a point where you knew nothing about this stuff. But with that said, is that you can educate yourself, you can give yourself the information. There are so many resources out there nowadays to where you can get this information. It's just knowing where to go and who to get it. It's a good thing, and yes, it's a bad thing, but find those people, find those resources that you trust and based on whatever the reasons are. That's a decision that you're going to have to make. But that helps to really isolate the information, and that helps to make it more small scope. That makes it a lot less intimidating when you take everything into account. So I challenge and recommend other people, really do that. Find the sources that you feel comfortable with, and really helps to narrow that scope. It really does.
absolutely, man. And I think the big thing that you were saying, just to kind of chime in real quick, is the real conclusion to it all is then using your own logic and understanding to really reason it out. Right? You said there is good, there's bad, there's so much out there. But then take a minute with yourself and go, all right, what's going to work for me? Maybe you don't know at the moment, but as you said, you start taking the test, you start going through, you learn your lessons, and that's how you ultimately come out going, hey, all right, I know what I need to do, not just because someone else told me to do it. This is what I did through my journey. I heard them, and now here I am. So, but anyway, man, is there anything you want to? I know you gave a great little finish there, but anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, no, the biggest thing I can say is, again, anybody's trying to do weight loss or any sort of that, just understand time. It takes time. It really does.
Mhm.
Um, Sometimes it's okay to take a break. I did that. It's okay to take a mental break, because it can be very, very taxing on the mind, and sometimes that's what you need. Um, so again, just stick with it. If it's something that you want to do, just understand that it takes time. And if it was easy, um, everybody would be doing it. So it's going to be hard, it's going to be challenging, but if you put in the right mind and put in the right energy and you put in the right time, you can get there. And I know this sounds cliche, but I truly, at one point, was somebody who never ever in my life thought I could do it. If I can do it, I promise you, you can. So I know that I feel like every person ever has always said that. Like, if I can do it, you can. And I know it sounds so cliche, but obviously, like I said, you knew me.
Right.
And I mean this truly. Like if I could do it,
If
I mean
you can
I'm
do it, you can. I agree.
any anybody can do it. So that's a big thing. Like you can do it. You can. So
That's awesome. Well, I love you, brother. We'll hopefully try to do it again. If you have anything coming up, any goals and stuff, I think I know you're just kind of going with it now, and then you got a lot on your plate, but I think it's important just to kind of hear people checking up and seeing, right? As you said, the biggest thing is staying with it. So, but yeah, man, dude, we'll definitely talk soon. Obviously, I'll see you soon, but until then, man, love you, dude. We'll do this again. All right.
all right, love you too, brother. Thank you.